Linux Out Loud is firing up our mics, connecting those headphones as we prepare to get rowdy. I'm Wendy, and I'm joined by my fellow co-hosts, Matt and Nate. We're three friends sitting around a virtual table talking Linux, open source, tech gaming, and everything in between. We keep the banter friendly, the conversation somewhat on topic, and have fun doing it. This week, we're spouting off about hate for the big corporations versus how they benefit Linux. Let's get into episode 94.
Hate is gonna hate, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm pretty sure we'll get some hate after this episode. But before we get too much into that, Matt, you once again, I don't know like how many times they've said this lately, have picked up some new hardware. So tell us about it at least as much as you can.
So anybody who knows is Nate is the person, if you want to talk emulation and older style gaming and all that kind of stuff. Generally, not generically my wheelhouse. A lot of it boils down to getting the collections and the way you have to go about getting it. Kind of a gray area as far as where it sits legally. Yeah. There are solutions out there, and I will let you figure out where they can go and find them. But there is a solution that I have shared with Nate as far as what I found that literally, I kid you not, it is a 12 terabyte drive. 12 terabytes of games.
That's a lot of games. I can't imagine somebody would be able to play all them.
No, supposedly, I'll use this term very loosely. There is about 90,000 of them on this drive. There's arcade games, there is Amiga games, the list is long. And I won't go into all of them. It uses certain open source stuff like Play Night, which is on Windows, and is a Windows specific kind of a GOG Galaxy, Steam kind of front end,
allowing you to play some of those older games that may not necessarily run on current hardware.
Less Lutris, but more like game manager. So it's like pop it open. Okay. It's like it'll give you. It's kind of almost like it looks like a Kodi front end, almost kind of how it's set up, like you would in movies. Probably the best way to describe it. Or Nate, you'll get the reference for the little bit you play around on the Atari VCS, like the actual VCS OS itself, kind of like that.
Okay.
But I bought this specifically to get into emulation more. Now, my process for this is basically buy the drive and point EmuDeck at it. That's going to be my solution to getting into robbing it and whatnot. I have other ROMs and stuff for games that I legally own. I will make this clear that I have, but this was like game preservation. Like this is like a game preservation thing to me at this point. There was a study that came out, I don't know, like last year sometime. It was less than like 18% of the entire digital game library for every company has been preserved. You're talking almost like 80+% of the gaming history just shot.
Gone. Yeah.
So that to me, and this is kind of the only way like consumers can really go about it. And these are IPs that people have abandoned, don't care about. Take your pick. Lost and forgotten. They're locked away in some IP dungeon that these guys keep. And I'm all about the IP, like people having the intellectual properties and all that stuff. I get it. It's creative works. I'm not against any of that. But at some point, because they talk art, was your art benefiting anybody if they never see it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I get that. And I know I've talked about in the past, and Nate's talking about in the past, how much we love sharing some of those old games that we played with our kids and that kind of thing. And just seeing the joy between generations with some of that same gaming. And I think you're right. There's some really cool art. There's some really cool games out there that if you don't keep them alive somewhere, then what's the point, right?
Yeah, and these companies are terrible about. And I'm going to be real; these are companies that, Nintendo historically has been terrible about preserving their own IPs. They have no problem reselling you their IP when they deem it
at
worth
steep prices.
When they deem it worth, redoing. But there are games that Nintendo has produced that you won't see the light of day again since like the NES or the Famicom, if you want the Japanese version. It's just these companies are terrible at it, and I think this is the only way consumers can really get into any of this is these kind of solutions. And the quicker game companies realize it, the quicker they can actually maybe turn a profit on it.
Right.
For storage stuff.
I kind of I feel like a lot of these game companies, they don't value what they've produced. Like they only value it for the immediate dollar at the time. But once they don't see there's any value in the dollar for it anymore, or yen, they don't seem to care about the fact that this is a piece of art. This is something of cultural significance to somebody, and making it easier to and more accessibly be able to, keep that available, like, in perpetuity. It's just kind of sad. And so like when it comes to like emulation and this 12 terabytes, 90,000 some odd games of stuff, I would make the argument that, fight the good fight and preserve the culture, preserve the artistic heritage of video games, as opposed to letting it fade away into digital obscurity and bit rot. Because, someday there might be a gem in that collection that somebody down the road, maybe, a nephew, a niece, and, whatever, a kid, grandkid, that would find it interesting. And also the other thing too is a lot of these modern games are so network dependent. I'm kind of sad for this generation of gamers because they won't be able to share their gaming heritage, their experience growing up, things that, the nostalgia that is actually proven to extend life. People who think about, who are nostalgic of the past, tend to live happier, more fulfilled lives. And I kind of feel like, I think Nintendo is kind of stinky about preserving these things and making them available and not being, doodlebugs about it.
Well, and I actually hadn't thought about it, but you're right. There's so many games that run on a server right now. And when those goes down, especially if they don't open source the game after a certain amount of time, then they're gone. They're gone forever. You don't have the server, you can't play it at all.
Yeah, that is very true. So I'll use this as an example. One of my favorite games is a game called Syndicate. No, Nate, not the 1993 Syndicate game, which was the RTS. I already knew where you were going to go. There was a first-person shooter that EA put out back in like 2012. Fun game. Like it's just got that cyberpunk vibe to it. First-person shooter. It's all stuff that I like.
Yeah.
But it uses a god-awful DRM that has limited activations and is just a giant headache to work around. The only way I can use it, though, and play it is by having it on an EA account. But at this point, it is getting harder and harder with new versions of Windows to run it. And trying to run EA launcher app, whatever thing they're calling it now, on Linux is plausible. It's not a great experience. And there's some hoops to jump through. But if they put it out on GOG, if they anything but like this game is not available for purchase anymore. This happened with Activision when they put out the War for Cybertron games back in the mid 2010s. You can't purchase those anymore at all. They're PS3, 360 locked. And when Microsoft, which is weird given the fact that Microsoft bought Activision, you think they could do something, seeing how we have a game preservation department. Yeah, so you can put it all on Xbox Game Pass. Thanks, cool. I want a subscription service. So
or not.
Anyway,
yeah.
Anyway, this is just something
We're doing
else.
A good deed, but you have to pay for it.
So for me, this is more, again, about game preservation. This is why I've been more inclined to go to with like GOG and all these other, like, I love Valve and I love Steam, but like that sense of like, if the internet blows up, I still have at least a good portion of my digital library locally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not one for like making new laws because I'm a little bit more of a, I don't want to say laissez-faire, but I don't like making, I don't necessarily like making new laws. I don't give governments new power, but I do like the idea of maybe some sort of a provision that once some bit of software has been abandoned, or like even like the server stuff, that it should be released to the open source for preservation purposes, for artistic preservation purposes. Now, in my house, we don't play a lot of network games, really. I mean, I guess every once in a while there's some Fortnite, but that's probably not art worth preserving anyway.
Yeah.
Among Us is good, but Minecraft is still probably the most popular. It has been for some time now, but you can run your own server, so I feel like that at least it's got some legs underneath it, so it can actually continue to exist.
Yeah.
And yes, it does require the Microsoft authentication. It used to be Mojang, but I'm sure some industrious hacker will probably, if Microsoft either like imploded and there was no more, they weren't supporting the project anymore, supporting the game anymore, I'm sure somebody would be able to reverse engineer the authentication piece of it, or put a little wedge in there to prevent for that to continue on. So that has a lot of potential of just living, basically forever. Although I do. It's fun to hear my oldest talk about, because they changed the music in Minecraft, I guess, and so he gets nostalgic for old Minecraft, which to me is still a new game. So it's like, okay, but anyway, yeah, gaming is art that should be preserved, and I'm glad that somebody's preserving it in a 12 terabyte hard drive.
So while I'm sitting here talking about game preservation and stuff, Nate, you got some server talk though to give up. So what's going on?
Yes. Okay. So I was having a chat with myself, and I think we've talked about previously about the server I'm building. You're going to say something, Matt?
You're having a chat with yourself.
Yeah. Well, I talk to you, but you either don't respond or you just make fun of me. So I
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the default.
Anyway, we've talked previously about the server I'm building. And so we'll talk about that in another week, but I think after we're done recording here,
Where's the RAM? Where's the RAM?
It's sitting on top of it right now. It's not been plugged. It's not been put in, but all 280 gigabytes are going to be installed.
Yes.
So darn both of you. Anyway, also new CPUs. But anyway, that aside, that's not what I'm talking about here. We'll talk about that another time. I'll tell you about how great it is. So one of the things that I want to be able to do, and this is kind of harkens back to my first employer where I first started using Unix and enjoyed the wonders of being able to sit at any computer and having your home directory kind of follow you around and so forth. So what I've done is I've extended the storage of every machine that I choose to using NFS with a system called FSCache. And what that is it allows you, like NFS, network file server,
right?
Something network file server, I think network file system. Anyway, it doesn't matter. NFS, you can mount those onto your file system, and it's a remote or virtual file system that allows you to it'll act pretty much as though it's native, like it's on. It behaves like your drive that's in your computer, whatever your storage.
Nice, yeah.
And so it extends it. So what I've done is, one of the problems I have, because I create a lot of stuff, a lot of garbage, a lot of cubicle night things, videos. Not so many videos lately, but I still do have a lot of videos. And actually, I have a bunch of videos that are in the works, and for one reason or another, I haven't finished them. But anyway. That aside, there's I generate all of these files, and I don't really feel good about just throwing them away when I'm done with them. So I've been archiving them. But then what I found is I've actually gone back into those videos, and because I've moved the location, I have to either copy them back or play this game of the shell game to try and make this Kden Live project be usable again or whatever. So instead, what I've done is I'm using my new server. It's not only does it replicate everything that's on my local drive, but also I have an archive on there. So essentially what I'll do is I'll move larger files onto this archive, and then I can symlink it back. And using NFS with FSCache, essentially it still is resident. Like I can access it as long as I have internet connection. I can access it.
Yeah.
And then the FSCache portion of it allows like if I'm working on it, if I'm going back through a video or whatever, is if I've pulled it locally, so it caches it locally, then it seems as though it is all natively running on my local system. So it speeds up the efficiency and everything else too. Now, when I'm remote, I can still do all this stuff. Like if I'm being a digital nomad, it still works, not as well because you have, your pipe isn't quite as fast, as though being on my local area network. But it does work really quite well. So it wasn't a very complicated process. Tuning it, I'm still in the process of tuning it, but I did write an article because it does work, but there might be some other things I'm kind of working on.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few articles out there on how to do that, but they weren't really a complete picture for me. And so I in my article, I show just kind of how it works, using a diagram, which is actually from another website, but I made it. I couldn't actually just suck it in, so I had to make my own. But it makes it very simple so you can understand the process. And then so first was installing FSCache, enabling it so that it actually is operating, and then creating the NFS share. So there's a process to that on the server side where I have to create permissions for the NFS server. Now, Yast makes it really easy in OpenSUSE. There's a way to do it obviously without, but I'm lazy and I like how OpenSUSE does things like that. Anyway, so I create the share, and then I don't know if you've ever set up NFS shares, you can limit it per device, so either by IP or host name, stuff like that. So for my demonstration, I just showed a wildcard, so basically anything on your network would be able to mount the share, but not necessarily access it. And so it is dependent on the user ID numbers. So you can't access something that's like your file system. It's got to have the same user ID. So that's one thing you have to keep ahead of time. So if your user ID is 3001, you have to make sure that it's 3001 everywhere. Anyway, so I set up on the server side, got it going, working great. And then the client side, I had to mount that. And this is where things kind of were. I'm still fine tuning this exactly for my use case. But what I have right now on my article now works, no problem. But I can mount it, use it, and move things around, whatever. But if I want to have it automatically mount, like when I connect to a network or when I wake back up from a sleep state, I had to make some modifications to the FSTAB to get that to work. So, and there's another I added something else too. Also, like, so if it can't access it, so it times out, so it doesn't hang up the file system. I did add that, and that will be in the article. But anyway, so what's really nice is now, no matter where I am, as long as I have internet connection, I have 32 terabytes of storage readily available to my system. So I don't have to worry about, okay, so there's only like 29 left, but there's maybe 28, 27, doesn't matter. So there's tons of space. So if I need to clear something up locally, or if I want to, run a virtual machine that's actually sitting over on the server instead, I can very easily do that. It all nicely integrates, works great, and I really like. It's very exciting. So the next step I have also done is I have this little crappy Chromebook that is the one I talked about a while ago. Where my son he put OpenSUSE Linux on this Chromebook, and it's but it has only like 12 gigabytes of local storage. So what I did on that machine was I didn't use the FSCache portion of it because it doesn't have the resources to be able to cache, but I did use the NFS piece of it, and so I mounted that NFS share onto there, and then instead of using the local documents, pictures, and everything else, I just symlinked it all, so I have the server stuff. So I can take the Chromebook, and as long as I'm on my network, I can use it as though I'm using any other computer that has the files.
Nice.
And the performance is great because it's a Chromebook, so it doesn't have that much horsepower anyway. So I'm not going to notice the bottleneck is not going to be accessing the files on this one. And so basically I can have this computer, like if I'm, I don't want to take my framework and like, if I'm like typing or something like on the couch or in bed or whatever, and I fall asleep, I don't want the framework to fall off my lap or whatever onto the floor and smash. So if this Chromebook falls down, no big deal. It's got little rubberized ends on it anyway. It'll just bounce.
Right.
And so I can be productive without being on my framework when I'm, kind of more of a less safe environment for it. So anyway, I super like it. I'm very happy. It's a great system. It's easy to implement. I got some little fun nerdy statistics that are in there as well, and also I define what the different options are, so it's understood. This does require systemd to be able to automatically do its thing. There's non-systemd ways of doing it, but it's harder to automate. I'd have to like write an agent or whatever to do these things. So just use systemd. It's got all the different things built into it for automatically mounting when network is available and everything else. So anyway, it's pretty cool. I like it, and you can check it out on cubicalnate.com.
Yeah, absolutely. I will make sure that there is some images of this as you're going through and talking about it on the video. Really interesting. I love the idea of being able to access stuff from any computer. And I get it. I have stuff that I don't throw away as far as all of the shows go. And they are on a separate drive because I definitely don't have enough storage inside my main system. But it would be nice to be able to see, I want to be able to archive them, but the files are so large, they really need compressed for long storage. I haven't really gotten into any of those old files. Yeah, for a long time, if any, for the video files. I mean, I do like making sure I have backups of that because when I got this NVIDIA graphics card, I didn't wait to make sure stuff was backed in before I put the graphics card in, and then things went wrong, and then I ended up losing like a whole bunch of DaVinci Resolve projects. So thankfully, a lot of them had been backed up for like previous reasons, or I had older versions that I could fall back on because I don't create a new project every single time I do the show. I duplicate an old project so that I don't have to redo a whole bunch of work. And,
that makes total sense.
When I did that, I lost stuff.
I just gave you painful. The GPU. You can't blame me for you being not following your own editor's instinct.
I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming you at all. I know that was 1,000% me. I did it to myself. I'm just saying that'd come in handy.
Yeah, these things happen. I've lost some data before, and it's such a kick right in the gut when you lose some data, and that.
Yeah, it is.
Like you knew better, and you're like, nah, it'll be fine. You'll say that, and then they're like, oh man, I am such a moron. But
yeah, I know that feeling. For sure.
Definitely do. That's the reason I'm being a digital hoarder at this point in time, because it's just been kicked too many times with that whole thing.
Save all the files. Just save all the files. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and then for me, like I'm going through and recovering data from. I have all these like spindles of CDs that I back stuff up. Yeah, CDs and DVDs.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm finding like some really cool old memories. I don't know if I told you this, but I found a CD of wedding pictures from my sister's wedding, and apparently she didn't have all of these. So
cool.
I recovered those. Yeah, and I gave those to her. And I should have just given her the CD and said, figure it out. But I'm not like that. I thought about it.
So you're going to want to cut this portion right here, Wendy, for a second.
But I found old pictures of like my time in the service 20 years ago that I didn't have anymore. So it was really neat to see all these things and then put them on my server, which is using Btrfs. So it prevents the bit rot at least a little bit more so, and all these things. And then I'm working on mirroring the stuff that I want to archive and save onto my NAS. So I'll have two locations, and then I'm also going to push it up to Backblaze as well eventually. So I'm not there yet, but I'll start pushing this. So I have like a insurance policy, kind of a backup.
The multiple backup plan. Yeah.
This way everything is, is backed up, at least until I die, and then I don't care. So then I'm dead.
Then it doesn't matter anymore, huh?
Right. So speaking of dead, so you said the camps have started. What camps are these you're talking about? That was a terrible segue, but I went with it.
It works. It absolutely works. So robotics camps are in full swing right now. Today was actually day 1 of camp. So we set up yesterday. By the time you get this episode, camps will actually be over.
Oh,
I do have some pictures. I know, right? But that means by the time you get this, I will have like way more pictures and video. So I do have some pictures of the tables fully set up. They're looking really, really good. And I am still printing mountains at the time for them. So hopefully by the time we get to Friday, which is when we're going to need all 4 tables, then all 4 sets of mountains are going to be there for that. But overall, just busy, just tired. I'm still in camp gear. Like I did camp stuff all day, robotics. We jumped in the car. We came home. I cleaned off a portion of my desk that you'll see. And
it's too dark. I can't
jumped
see anyway.
into doing the show. Awesome. Love it. That's the goal. Hide my mess. So that's what I'm doing for the next couple of weeks. So we are recording a little bit early as to like when you're going to get this, just so that I've got time somewhere in there to actually get it edited. But I'll be dropping videos of the game tables, video of robots on the game table, and you can see how that went for the year. I've talked enough about setting up for it. You might as well get to see the end product.
Yeah, it'll be good to see those pictures. And are you going to share them outside of watching the YouTube? I normally listen back. I don't always watch back.
So they'll definitely be in the video portion. I will try to get them up on the discourse thread as well. So they won't be on the website, but I'll try to drop them in on the discourse forum as well. That's a better place to have some of the pictures. So you can check the video version if you already watch, or the discourse thread, which if you do go to the website version of it, it can link you back to that as well if you want to. Their naming convention is all the same. I label the show and the show in the discourse equally, so it should be pretty easy to find, but that's where you can find pictures if you don't watch the video version of the show.
Got it. And awesome.
Sometimes we're all about the drama on here, where we get nice and loud, and I think that might be the occasion this week. So, Matt, I know you ran into a thread between the different communities that we've got going on, and this kind of balance or turmoil over the fact that we've got these larger corporations, some of them not always looked upon quite friendly, but then we also get to benefit from some of the stuff that they do contribute to open source. And what are your thoughts on this? Let's get dirty.
Oh,
no, I'm gonna watch.
Do I have things to say? Says the guy with his own community's turmoil at the moment there, Sousa boy.
Go ahead.
Oh, throw it back. That's right. So
not much of a throwback.
Because it's true, but
okay.
The short version. Go ahead.
In all fairness, every so often there's some kind of weird drama in the open source world, but it eventually works itself out. You got some people make things.
It's always people.
Anyway, The short version is that there was a debate, and I'll call it that politely, about the licensing of RHEL, of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and how CentOS Stream is not what RHEL is, et cetera, and you need a developer account, which, by the way, is free anyway, for RHEL in order to get the source code to RHEL, so it doesn't live to the free and open source nature and spirit and all the other stuff. This is the same argument we hear anytime licensing is brought up in general in the open source community. And it is super annoying to hear. Spirit and legality are two very different things. The way RHEL has currently done it and the way RHEL has worked currently, it is within the confines of the license. Like it or not, it's within the confines of the license. You can feel however you want about it, the legality and rel is a commercial product. It to me is no do. To me, it is. I wanted to say something else. To me, it is. To me, it is no different than what SLED back in the day, SUSE Enterprise Linux and all that stuff used to be, or when they went to Leap and Tumbleweed. You had, to me, CentOS Stream is essentially the equivalent to what Tumbleweed used to be. And when there was a static release, it was Leap. There's no difference. So I always find these complaints. It's like, if you're going to go the principled approach and all this other stuff about X, Y, and Z, about licensing and everything else, and you want to complain about the company that you are benefiting from, you have to go to the automatic natural conclusion of that line of logic. This is the same when people complain about, oh, I bought my, this is a Chinese laptop. Well, bro, if you bought Lenovo, hate to break it to you, it's a Chinese company.
Right. Yeah.
Or are you making sure your RAM came from Taiwan, or is it coming from China, or is it, that whole natural line of thought is just so, quite frankly, dumb to me, because if you're going to go to that principle argument, you have to live it. So to me,
and I think some of it comes through is the fact that there is a lot of hate for Red Hat in general anymore. There's a lot of hate for Ubuntu in general anymore. And some of those projects, it just seems like it doesn't matter what they do, they can't do anything right. And we do benefit a lot from Red Hat and the stuff that they send upstream and downstream. And I'm very thankful for that stuff. And at the same time, we've seen open source licenses that leave anything and everything available, and how the same large corporations, Mac, can take that and lock it down and turn it into something else for their own uses. So I don't blame Red Hat for wanting to say, this is what our market is. This is how we are employing our developers. This is how we're making our money. So, hey, yes, we are still an open source company. If you would like to have access to this stuff, you can get a free developer account and still be able to use that. But we're not going to hand it all to you perfectly packaged. You can do the work in order to get from A to B.
Yep. So here's the thing. These corporations, whether we like them or not, or like what they do pay for our way to enjoy the open source aspect of it. So
yeah,
we can hate on the corporations all we want, but at the same time, it's like the chickens hating me for feeding them. Actually, that's a terrible analogy, but it's. We're biting the hand that feeds us, essentially. So they are employing the developers that build these things. And yes, Linux existed before corporations, but I think corporations helped to make these projects sustainable, because if there's an actual value, a marketable value, then there's automatically a desire and drive to keep these things running and to continue to develop and make them better. Servers cost money to run. Someone's got to pay for the hardware. Someone's got to pay for electricity. Someone's got to pay for the dude that goes there and does the maintenance from time to time. Somebody's got to do that, and these people have to eat. So if you can't, if people can't make money off this technology, they're going to make money doing something else, and then we lose out. So sure, companies are going to do things that we don't like. Red Hat's going to do things that people don't like. SUSE is going to do things that people don't like.
Right.
Like right now.
Things that you don't like, yes. Even though you have an unhealthy obsession with open SUSE.
Almost. And I see that you put a little label down here that says unhealthy obsession.
I did. No, Matt did. You did.
No, I am not the one hosting this call. I cannot. Don't even.
Anyway, almost unhealthy obsession. So, corporations, organizations, they are all made up of people. And people are imperfect. And we have competing interests and desires. And sometimes when they don't align well enough, we get into some kind of an argument over it, a flame war maybe eventually. And, for a while, people are unhappy. And generally speaking, they kind of work themselves out. We don't, I mean, we get mad at Red Hat, and then we're not mad at Red Hat. Then they give us something really cool. Then we all love Red Hat for a while. And then they do something else. We're mad at Red Hat. It's like, it's an interesting relationship dynamic for sure. The open source with the corporations. And I think the best way to be is, even if you're unhappy with what somebody's doing, you can be open and say, I don't really like what you're doing right now. So, but I do appreciate your work, but I don't like what you're doing right now. And also, if they apologize, don't hold it against them. Some companies will do dirty things and never apologize and ask for more money and try and hack you to back things that they don't fulfill anyway. That's for another, Libra. And
Libra.
and
I'm sorry. I'm sorry that cough just got to me.
Yeah, I know. It's like these allergies. I don't have allergies, but
it must be.
I think I paid for a LeBrick 5.
Yeah, and it's probably still working just the same as when you bought it. Or got it. Whatever. So I guess the point there is we got to be patient, hold individuals accountable. These corporations do benefit from the work of passionate technical enthusiasts as well. So they also need to be, they do need to, I don't want to say cave the community, but they do need to cater somewhat to their communities that do support them that they don't pay for. So there's a bit of, of balance in there. I mean, with both sides of this. So, are there rotten people in the businesses? Yes, they're usually accountants. If you're an accountant, I'm sorry, you're a rotten person. I mean, I appreciate the work you do, but stop it. Someone's got to count the beans. And there are engineers that are very passionate in these companies that want to do great things and develop the technology and do cool stuff. I mean, they do. And then there are, the business teams that they want to maximize profits. And then they see these expenses for community stuff. And then, so it's up to the engineers and to the community to help to demonstrate the value of the community and the technology enthusiasts. Because the fact of the matter is, those business teams, they're not going to be able to sell anything to anybody and get the support that they need if they don't also engage their community. So, anyway, it'll all work out in the end.
I think that was a great way to put it, that things aren't black and white. We actually are living in this gray area where there has to be give and take between everyone and the balance. Yes, you have the corporations that are making money off of the developers, but we've talked about it time and time again that if you don't find a way to keep open source projects solvent, then they're going to go away and you're going to be in trouble. And this is kind of that gray area, that give and take, in where that you can have some help, you can have some kickback from the larger corporations. I am not a fan of NVIDIA at all, even though I'm running an NVIDIA graphics card. That partially has to do to the editing software of choice and the fact that I can't live without some of the features that they have. But on the other side of that, I also want to be able to give them credit for the things that they have been doing on the open source side. They're finally working with Wayland, trying to get some of that stuff going. So, I'm not an unforgiving person. I want to be able to say, yes, like I don't like these things. Yeah, I'm not like that.
I'm kidding.
I want to be able
Matt forgives you eventually.
I want to...
Takes years.
If it's you, Nate, no, I don't.
Not true.
I want to be able to say I don't like these things, and these are why I don't like these things. But hey, thanks for helping out over here. I would love to be able to see more of this, and just having that open conversation where you're keeping things civil. You're not only saying that you don't like it, but why you don't like it. And I almost feel like I'm repeating myself, that I'm on a record of saying this over and over again, but that sums it all up. We live in a gray area. We live in a place that there has to be give and take, and you don't have to like everything a company does. And it's okay to decide, hey, I'm not going to support this particular company. But at the same time, if you're constantly hating on them and not looking at all of the awesome things that they've done, well, it just leaves you looking bad.
Mm-hmm. So the way I view this, and Nate, you'll probably understand this having been in like the military and understanding that it's like Wendy, you mentioned it, it's a give and take. Mm-hmm. You're as a manager, you're managing personalities. Like this is the aspect people don't get. How I'm going to approach one company, say in this case, we take company and put a person there instead. How you interact with one company might be totally different than how you interact on a community level with another company. Mm-hmm. Because it could be rapport, it could be the individual, it could whatever reason. It's going to be totally different. And you have to go into those things, those kind of conversations, understanding that. It's like when I'm at work and I'm managing the 20 or 30 people I got to manage, I'll have a conversation, but the conversation and the way it's delivered or entailed or whatever, but still the context of it is still delivered in the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just how you package it is going to be a little bit different. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, am I going to package this as a Deb or a Tar-GZ? Which one do you want? You know, if you want the Linux reference. Or which one are you going to use? Are you using DNF to actually install things? So anyway, the whole point is like, I just get tired of people in the community sometimes just they want to benefit from what they take from these corporations, and it's symbiotic. It always has been since the day of the first corporate, Linux system. And, from the VA Linux systems of old to when IBM jumped in, all of that stuff. When that stuff started, that symbiotic relationship started. And if you're going to benefit from them and then you complain about it and benefiting from it, and you only complain and benefit from it, and you still use it, quite frankly, you are a hypocrite.
Yeah. Yeah.
Frankly, like that is the bottom line. I am not a big fan of, like Wendy, you mentioned, NVIDIA. Not the biggest fan of them. I've had my own hardware issues with them. Look at people want to know why the Surface Book runs Windows again. Thanks NVIDIA. Yeah. But the point is, I'm going to give them props for hiring the Nuevo driver. One of the
absolutely.
He just dropped like 160 changes to the Nuevo driver, so that we could have better performance and all that stuff with the open source driver. Mm-hmm. NVIDIA paid for that. They're open sourcing a lot of the kernel level modules and stuff so that the driver ties better in with the boot experience and everything else that goes with that. Like, say what you want about the firmware not being open source and all the other stuff. Whatever. I'm not going to get into all of it, but I'm going to applaud those companies that do that. I don't like everything Red Hat does. I don't like GTK personally, but I think it's a giant waste of space as far as how it's designed and everything else. But there are a ton of people that love it. So props to Red Hat for contributing to that and supporting that. Mm-hmm. Props to them for supporting GNOME and the GNOME Foundation. Mm-hmm. Like, those are all projects I personally don't care about because they don't fit what I use. But props for them for doing it. But do I like everything Red Hat does? No, I don't. Do I like everything Canonical does? No, I don't. Do I like everything? Well, okay. I'm just going to let Nate speak for OpenSUSE and SUSE because that's just... I'm just going to come across as a hater regardless.
I can't think of any company, even any person, even anybody in my personal life that I interact with on a daily basis that I always love everything that they do. Like, it doesn't happen.
Well, Magneto, whichever.
Let's get the naming convention.
Absolutely love my husband to death. But even in our 19 years of marriage, right? There's always going to be some sort of conflict. Hey, I think that was kind of a jerk move. But the nice thing is it's a relationship. There's give and take. And you can be like, hey, I don't like that. And this is why. And you can work on different things. Personal relationships, community relationships, company relationships. It's all the same. Nobody's going to be perfect. Period.
Nope. It's true. And the moment you find an organization that you think is perfect and you join it, then it's no longer perfect.
because you will start finding. Well, no, what he's talking about is you'll start seeing the flaws as you're in it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or just that you joined,
absolutely.
Like Matt, when the show was just Wendy and I, it was perfect, and then you joined it, and now it's no longer perfect.
And if you notice, the show was even better when it was just me and Wendy and no Nate. But the show totally the one common denominator though here is, Nate, when the show was me and you, it fell totally apart.
Yeah, pretty much the wheels.
Well, I'm glad of a positive in somebody's world. There you go.
There are no wheels on this wagon. Like what was it? Was it term you used, Matt? Like a train down a dirt road?
Yeah, it's like a train trying to go down a dirt road. It just doesn't work. Track.
Something that usually works though, Matt, is your game of the week. Sometimes I love it, sometimes I don't. See, there's not a positive in everything all the time, but this one, I might have to give it a try.
So this one is All Walls Must Fall. This is an interesting game because it was a paid-for game for a while. Back in May, give or take, the developer made an announcement where they actually made the game free. And like, it's free to own on your library. You pay nothing for it. Just click it, and it's a single player game. It's like a 2.5 gig game. Download. It's not super big. It kind of reminds me of a cross between like the old XCOM games and like Syndicate, but it's got, ironically, I laughed when I saw what it was labeled as. It's labeled as a tech noir style game. I just went automatically to a Terminator reference because that was where my mind went. I was like, hey, the club in Terminator. So it's just got an interesting art. I have not had a chance to play this, but I thought the fact that there's a Linux build for it, it's kind of a RTS kind of strategy style game with a unique art style that is very more comic, kind of like cyberpunky vibe to it.
Yeah.
That it is, and I've played the games that it's kind of based around, kind of the newer XCOM remakes that they made back in like 2014-ish and stuff. So it looks fun as heck, but I mean, for a free game on Steam, mind you, I thought it was a good recommendation. And there's the Linux native build if you want it.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I mean, it looks like it could be a fun game. I'm just going to go ahead and install it and play it and see how it goes.
Might as well. I'm typically not a fan of anything that's top down. I can be honest about the fact that I get really disoriented in top down style games, but it's one of those that I know I'm probably not going to be very good at the actual gameplay, but I absolutely love games that support our Linux penguins out of the box, if I'm taking a reference from Jill. And the fact that it kind of ties into our previous topic where the developer was like, hey, I made this game, I did this thing, and now after so long, I'm going to just go ahead and release it to the community. Here, have at it.
Yep. Yeah, it's not something you see enough. And like you said, it ties back into the conversation that we had about game preservation and the companies being terrible at it, us interacting with those companies and how we can do better. And this is an example of a company doing better with the community by rewarding the community for sticking around, saying, here's our prior work as you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it actually looks like this same developer has another game also for free on Steam that also supports our Linux penguins out of the box. This one is called The Mammoth, a cave painting. This one actually looks like it could be more up my alley than the original one that you suggested. Might have to give it a try.
Rabbit hole.
It does seem like these indie developers have more appreciation and value for what they produce than these larger game houses.
I agree.
I think so.
Yeah.
And that's one of the comments that Ryan made recently, that really the fun games, the innovative games are coming from these indie studios. They're not necessarily coming from the AAA titles.
No, AAA is done by committee. These are actually people who are passionate about the topics that they in the games that they make. The best example I can think of recently that shows something like that can still give you kind of a double A, bigger budget experience, but still feel indie, was when I recommended Star Trek Resurgence, because it was a game that you could tell that they dug deep into that lore. And just the feel and the vibe and everything else, that's how you can tell it's a passion. And with a lot of these big, like what Ryan was mentioning, a lot of the big AAA, it just kind of feel lifeless. It's designed by committee. It's open world. It's very
cookie cutter. It's the exact same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like a lot of the Marvel movies that have been coming out lately since Endgame. It's just kind of very cookie cutter, very whatever, with the villains and all the other stuff. Very forgettable. Very
right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Meandering would be the best way.
What we do on this show.
We're an ADD show. I think we've determined that.
Not diagnosed.
Yes.
I think we can safely diagnose.
I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Nate, while I am playing video games, as I always do, they are currently paused. You are apparently playing with software?
Yes.
Yes, they are, actually.
So, I don't believe you. So one of the joys, well, that's not the right word, PDFs are something I do a lot of. We've talked previously on the show about how I scan all my documents and then I save them. So instead of having a big filing cabinet worth of documents, I have a folder on a computer or on a series of computers, because it's all, replicated and everything else elsewhere. So I have these, I have a filing cabinet of PDFs. And so it does, one of the things I have to do sometimes is process PDFs, or I'll scan them, and I do it, like for some of them I want to OCR it so I can, read them later. And the problem with like Adobe, well, Adobe's got a lot of problems at this point right now, and I wouldn't recommend Adobe to anybody. But Adobe Pro is one of those, well-known, Adobe Acrobat, right?
Right.
So
yeah.
One of these pieces of software that people basically need, especially in the business world. And I've been enjoying, using PDFs for a long time. I don't think about it. And anyway, so I've had a need to get a good piece of software for this. So I ended up purchasing a commercial application for authoring PDFs or managing PDFs, or a PDF productivity tool anyway. And what's been really great about this, so PDF, it's by, all right, I'm bearing the lead here. Quoppa, Qoppa, I don't know how to say it, PDF Studio. It's a great cross platform application. It's built on Java, so like it or not, runs great in Linux. I've used it in Windows more recently, and if you are someone who needs something like Adobe Pro, this is a great alternative to it. In fact, since I'm an IT manager, I'm going to probably be moving away from Adobe Pro as our licenses expire and moving toward this, because you buy them in perpetuity. So when you buy it, you keep it. Novel, it's not a subscription. It runs locally.
Nice.
Doesn't do any of this phoning home nonsense that a lot of these other silly commercial applications go for. And then, if let's say it's time to upgrade, so I just bought the 2024, but I did have the 2021. It cost me like $30 to upgrade. So they don't charge you an arm and a leg for it. So
nice.
It's really inexpensive. And then you keep it. In fact, I think for a year after you purchase it, you get all the upgrades until that year's expired. And so that's
Perfect.
Really cool. And the interface is great. In fact, from year after year, the interface keeps getting better and better. So when I first used it how long ago was 2008? 6 years ago.
A couple days ago.
The interface is okay. Maybe it was 7, 8. The now it's even better. They have a dark mode. They had dark mode now for a few years, but they have a nice dark mode on it. So it's it looks good. It's got high enough contrast so that you can see all the buttons and everything else. So I really like using it. If you have to merge or split PDF documents, it's really easy to do. It's very intuitive. You can scan and crop pages very easily. I don't use the scan feature because I scan them all to a network drive, and just that's my workflow. but you can scan with it. I talk about the optical character recognition ability, fantastic. You can do digital signatures and stamps. So if let's say you had to go to a doctor's office and you want to fill out the forms ahead of time because, whatever reason, it's got all the typewriter feature and everything else. You can fill out a form, even if it's like a dumb form, and then you can sign it with like a stamp and then send it up, to the doctor's office and be done with it. Also converting Microsoft Office files, super easy to do. You can import, a file. Let's say you have a document, whatever, and you can actually do, pull it in, and then you can have your forms and everything else if you need that. So if you have to do such work, very easy to do. And also the installation process is really easy. The upgrades are easy to do. It's a nice piece of software, and nobody talks about it. It is commercial. I think it does cost. I don't know what the initial cost is for it. It's like maybe it's around $100. So it's an expensive piece of software. But because
it looks like it's closer to 180 for the initial license for one license. So if you're buying it in bulk for a business or something like that, you do get discounts with each license. But the upfront cost of 180 doesn't bother me as much, knowing that if you do go to upgrade versions, that they give you a very steep discount on the future versions.
Yes. In fact, I got emails saying, hey, if you upgrade today or upgrade this week, whatever, it'll get for $39, I think is what it was. So, and then
nice.
They don't force you to upgrade. In fact, I can still run, the previous version that I installed and the version before that I installed. And so I think maybe, don't tell the company, but I mean, I probably only upgrade maybe once every 3 years or so. Like when I think about it, I'm like, oh, a new feature. That's cool. And also another really neat feature that I really like is, let's say you scan something in and it's all askew and stupid looking, Have you ever seen that? Get that? You can have it so it fixes the scan and it'll fix it and level everything out. And then you can apply the OCR so you can actually, highlight text and copy it off. Nice. It's amazing how well it works. They do such a good job. And the big thing is the license in perpetuity is just fantastic. It's so refreshing.
I love stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so refreshing to have a company that doesn't abuse their users. And so Quopa or Qopa or Qdoba, that's not Qdoba, but that's what I think of when I look at it. Thank you for, number one, supporting Linux, and number two, for not gouging me, essentially. So
yeah, absolutely. I do not so much during the summer, but I do a lot with PDFs during the school year.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest headaches I have is when I have to, not necessarily splitting PDF files, but definitely adding to, creating them, or rearranging them. And so this is something that I might be looking into more. I love the fact that it is cross-platform, that you can install it on whichever machine you want to.
Yeah, and also I think you get like 4 different machines. You can activate like 4 different times for the same user. So I think you can have multiple. I think it's 4. I could be wrong on that. So fact check me. But there's multiple machines. I have it on multiple machines, and they've all activated no problem. So
perfect. So if you reach that limit, can you remove it from another machine in order to activate it there? Do you know how that works?
I don't know how it works, but I think so, because I've done like reinstalls on machines, and so I don't know how it came up with that number, and I haven't had any issues. I've not once have I had an issue with their licensing. So, and
sweet.
They basically send you a file, an email. It's got a string on it. Copy and paste that in there when you want to register it. But you can download it and use it for free. And I think it has like watermarks. Maybe some features are disabled. But if you want to try that out, it's got some. You can use it for free.
It does have a free trial. It does have some other bits and pieces of software that you can use for free. A viewer, a few other things. So definitely wanted to take a look at.
Yeah. So I found it back in 2008. Been using it ever since for various things. There's some great open source tools as well, but this is a full featured PDF productivity application that just
top to bottom. Yeah,
that is better than Adobe Acrobat for numerous reasons. They try harder.
That is the key.
So speaking of trying harder, how's your open source printer voyage going?
Well, as I was in the midst of trying to figure out how I was going to get everything done for this, and we were talking about some of the different parts of our robotics game taking forever, I was like, man, I would love to have a resin printer. I'd absolutely love to have a resin printer. And we were kind of back and forth as to like what those different names were. So the resin is the MSLA printer. And I came across one that is open source. This one looks pretty gosh dang cool. And I will be sharing the link for this, of course, for both the printers I found inside of the show notes. So the first printer I have for you to share that's an open source project is a resin printer. And one of the things that I love about this project is it actually has a really nice build volume. For part of the issue that I'm running into when I'm looking at some of these other resin printers is not only are they really expensive, but you can only print, for the most part, really small little objects. And so this one actually gives you a pretty large build space. And you've got all of the information on how to start from building the case for and all of that fun stuff. I'll just drop that, like I said, there in the show notes. You can pick it up and say, is this something I want to build? The other one that I found, and I'm trying to figure out an excuse to build this, is one of the SLS printers. So this one, you're actually using that powder instead of using a resin. And I watched a video of the one guy after he'd built it, and he's just throwing all these little things in there. There was like 6 benchies and these parts and this parts, and then, hey, rearrange it inside the bed. Okay, so I want this individual thing to print on this angle because it prints better. And so it readjusted in the bed. You fill it with the appropriate powder. It goes to work. And when it's done, yes, you have some extra work in cleaning it up like you do in resin, but the sheer amount of parts that can be printed in one go is absolutely astounding to me. I have no idea what it would cost to actually build this printer from scratch. They do have kits, so you can have some help in building it. I'm pretty sure that there's ways that you can go about building it without buying one of the kits, but I absolutely love this. Am I probably going to have it in my budget to buy the kit? No, it's still too expensive, but a smaller version of this. Can I take this same idea with this open source, I was going to say rules, but directions and that kind of thing? Can I take something and make something maybe smaller, cheaper? I don't know. At the overall cost, I think it's probably too much for my budget, but I love it. I love the fact that if you're trying to get into the business of making bulk parts, something like that, that this is a way to affordably do it. I haven't looked into another one to see how much they cost. I'm kind of scared too. But it's cool. I like it. If you're wanting to build an open source printer, you've seen all about the ones that are the traditional ones that are laying down filament. These are 2 other options to add to your fun printer geekiness that are also open source.
Yeah, no, this is really cool. I mean, I don't have $7,000 to drop on a toy right now, but if I did, this would definitely be on it. And also, the first print of the resin printer, also extremely cool. And yeah, it is a lot bigger. I'm actually impressed. There's a 13.7-inch monochrome display on it. That seems that seems ridiculously big.
As of like funding wise, or the cost of building it, the resin printer is most likely going to be the cheaper of the 2 avenues, regardless.
So what I'm curious about is the liquid you use as the resin. Last I checked, that was not cheap, and also there's a lot of you better have some kind of a volume of things you're printing, because the resin doesn't last forever. It does have a shelf life. So I don't know how that works. You have to be careful
with it. You have to make sure that it's not exposed to UV. Yeah. So one of the reasons that had me looking at UV printers again in general was the fact that those reefs were just so complicated, and they're a bigger pain to print on a traditional printer. And resin is just a better way to go. Now, am I going to print stuff like that very often? Probably not.
Yeah. So it's got to be in a room that probably doesn't have windows, or at least has curtains over it or something along those lines. And
Yeah, you're better off to not have stuff that's exposed to sunlight.
Light,
and at the same time, you're going to need additional ventilation and that kind of stuff because the resin printers do have a smell to them, fumes that are coming off of them. So yeah, you do have to be more careful where you're putting them.
What you're saying is Matt probably can't have a printer like this because he's such a ray of sunshine that he would just cause the resin to just kind of
out, right? It would harden on contact.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I dozed off. I heard something about 3D printing and just kind of...
You just lost it.
And Matt went to sleep. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Matt went to sleep.
Hey, listen. I stayed awake for your game. You can stay awake for this.
I was awake.
Maybe.
I mentally checked out. There's a difference.
Oh. I gotcha. Now, I will say, I think of the two, I think I would probably go with the SLS printer. I think of the two. But
yeah.
I don't know.
They both have, overall higher costs in general. They both have way more cleanup when it comes to finished prints and that kind of thing. The powder one, though, is the one that really got me. Just being able to throw a whole bunch of parts inside the printer, let it go to work, and when you're done, you've got lots of different things. And they're not, laid flat on the bed. They're just stacked in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I've seen those operate, at a previous employer. And they are pretty darn cool. And they're fun to watch, do their thing. And, yeah, maybe someday.
Maybe one day.
Yep.
Exactly.
A boy can dream. Or a middle-aged man, whichever.
One of the two. Yeah.
They can both dream.
Now it's your turn to toss in your 2 cents on today's topics. Hit the discourse form, drop us a line under this video, or on the contact form by visiting tuxdigital.com/contact. If you'd like to hang out with us on our preferred social media, see the links in the bottom of the show description. Find other great shows like Pseudo Show, Destination Linux, or Linux Saloon, and more at tuxdigital.com. Yeah, you got to go hang out with Nate some more at Linux Saloon.
Yes, I would like that. Sometimes I can get even Matt to hang out, and he'll hang out for a little bit, when he feels like it. Then he leaves.
Yeah,
he leaves early, and then I get sad because he's not, he's not trying to
hang out. Not there to troll you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's a lot more fun to give me ribbings on more than one show.
Absolutely. Show for your love for your favorite podcasts and shows by visiting the Tux Digital merch store. Grab yourself some awesome swag, like the gamer-centric I Pause My Game to Be Here shirt, which Matt did for most of the show. Thank you for that. Or join #Team Wendy with some sinister Wendy swag.
Team Evil.
Nope.
I'm not going to throw anything
just
in that
Team
hat.
Get Even.
Team Retribution.
Yeah, there you go. As always, we thank you for joining us. We'll be back next time with another awesome sode of Linux Out Loud. Until then, keep the banter friendly, the conversation somewhat on topic,
You can swing it.
and have fun doing it. Almost on topic. Maybe on topic.
On topic.
We'll see.